Hello everyone, my name is the Storyteller, and today I will share with you some horror stories to help you fall asleep. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. But before that, write down in the comments where you are listening this and what time it is. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss upcoming horror stories. The storm rolled over Blackridge Prison like a living thing, swallowing the night in thunder. Floodlights blinked, shadows crawled along the razor wire, and the guards cursed the blackout that kept flickering through the security grid. Deep in cell block D, inmate 38,291 sat on his bunk, unmoving, eyes fixed on the small barred window. His name was Ethan Cross, though newspapers had called him the Hollow Man. 10 years ago, he'd left 13 people gutted and arranged in ritualistic poses around the town of Asheville. When the police finally caught him, he said nothing, only smiled at the cameras and whispered, "It's not over." Tonight, under the scream of the storm, those words came true. A power surge knocked the lights dead. For 30 seconds, the prison went blind. When they flickered back on, cell D23 was empty. The lock had been melted, the bars bent outward like soft metal. One guard swore he saw smoke coming from inside, but when they searched, all they found was a crude drawing scratched into the wall, a spiral with an eye in the middle. Ethan Cross was gone. Detective Marcus Hale had been there the night they caught Ethan. He'd watched him drag the last victim from a barn in Asheville, still breathing but barely. He'd seen the grin, that hollow, unblinking stare. It haunted him in every nightmare since. Now 10 years later, his phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m. "Detective Hale," came the voice from dispatch. "You're not going to believe this. Ethan Cross is gone." By the time Hale reached Blackridge, the rain was pouring sideways. The air stank of metal and ozone. The guards were pale, shaking, stumbling over each other's stories. Hale pushed through until he reached the cell, empty, cold, silent. On the floor was something the crime techs had missed, a single red thread tied into a tiny knot. The same kind found at every Hollow Man crime scene a decade ago. Hale's heart sank. He turned to the warden. "Lock down the state lines," he said quietly. "He's not escaping, he's coming back." Asheville hadn't changed much since Ethan's arrest. Same rusting mills, same fog that clung to the river, but people still whispered his name, never too loud, never at night. 3 days after the escape, the first body was found. A farmer named Miller, throat slit, eyes gouged, and a spiral carved into his chest. Detective Hale arrived before sunrise. The smell of blood mixed with damp earth. The farmhouse door was open, the walls covered in drawings, spirals, hundreds of them, all drawn in red. "He's making a map," Hale murmured, "or a message." His partner, Detective Sarah Linton, frowned. "Why here first?" "Because this is where it started," Hale said. "He's retracing his steps." From the tree line, something moved, a shadow slipping away through the fog. Hale shouted, but by the time he reached the edge of the woods, there was nothing but the sound of rain on leaves. Back at the precinct, the crime lab had found something in Miller's house, a tape recorder left beside the body. When Hale pressed play, the static hissed before a soft, calm voice filled the room. "Hello, Marcus, did you miss me? You thought you buried me in concrete and silence, but the silence speaks now. Every spiral leads home." Sarah froze. "He's talking to you." Hale clenched his jaw. Ethan always made it personal. During the trial, he'd stare only at Hale, never the jury. The killer seemed obsessed, as if Hale was part of his design. The tech paused the tape. "There's background noise like a bell, faint, maybe a church tower." Hale's eyes narrowed. Asheville's old chapel, abandoned 10 years ago. He loaded his gun. "We're going back." The chapel sat on the outskirts of Asheville, half swallowed by vines, roof caved in. The rain had stopped, but the mist clung to the ground like smoke. Hale pushed open the rotten doors, flashlights sweeping across broken pews. Something glinted on the altar, a small silver cross dripping red, fresh blood. Behind the pulpit, they found another spiral drawn in ash, larger than any before. In the center lay a photograph, a picture of Hale from the night he arrested Ethan. On the back, written in blood, were 4 words. "Let's finish the sermon." Sarah's breath caught. "He's hunting you." Hale looked around, senses sharp. Then he heard it, a faint whisper from the rafters, followed by the sound of footsteps above them. He raised his gun. "Ethan," he shouted. Silence, then a low, echoing laugh that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The hollow man was home. By morning, the chapel was sealed off, swarmed with crime techs. Every surface held traces of blood and soot. Hale stood outside, watching the dawn crawl over the misty hills. Sarah approached, holding a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a feather, black and oily. "Found this in the rafters," she said. "Raven maybe." Hale nodded. He used them before, left them near the bodies, meant to symbolize death as rebirth. He's sending a message. Sarah frowned. "To who?" Hale looked toward the distant town. "To me. He's trying to finish something he started." That evening, the sheriff called another body. Same spiral, same thread. Ethan was accelerating. The second victim was a young woman, 22, found behind an abandoned diner just off Route 9. Her hands were tied with the same red thread, and carved into the brick wall behind her was a phrase. "He forgot the promise." Sarah shuddered. "What promise?" Hale didn't answer. His hands trembled slightly as he knelt by the body. The pattern was precise, almost surgical. "He's not just killing," Hale murmured. "He's rebuilding something." Back at the station, Hale dug through old files, photos, transcripts, everything from 10 years ago. Then he found it, a letter Ethan had written in his first month of prison. "If they ever open the gates, I'll finish the circle. 13 again. Only then will it end." Sarah leaned over his shoulder. "He's going to kill 13 more." Hale's eyes darkened. "Not if I find him first." 3 nights later, someone knocked on Hale's door at 2 a.m. A woman stood outside, soaked to the bone, shaking. "He's coming," she whispered. "He's coming for me." Her name was Lydia Wren, a nurse from the old Asheville hospital, the same place where Ethan's mother had died years before. "I saw him," she said, "outside my window last night. He said my name. I moved here because I thought it was safe." Hale brought her inside, offered coffee, tried to keep her calm. "What did he say exactly?" She swallowed. "He said, 'You were there when she died. You helped them cut her open.'" Hale froze. Ethan's mother had died during an operation, a botched one. Lydia must have been part of the medical team. Sarah arrived minutes later. "We need to put her under protection." But by dawn, Lydia was gone. Her car still in the driveway, front door open. On the porch, they found a single word written in blood. "Mother." The FBI joined the investigation. Their profiler, Agent Work, studied Ethan's pattern like scripture. "He's reliving his trauma," Work explained. "He blames those who failed his mother, doctors, priests, cops. But Hale," he paused, looking at the detective, "you're the centerpiece, the final act." Hale said nothing. He already knew. The team began searching abandoned properties near the old Cross family land. The woods stretched for miles, black pines and empty cabins. Sarah turned to Hale. "You think he's hiding out here?" "No," Hale said. "He's building something. Every crime scene forms a shape, a spiral expanding outward from Asheville. The last point of the spiral leads straight to me." That night, as they prepared to leave the forest, Hale's radio crackled with static. Then a voice, calm and distorted. "You're getting close, Marcus. Don't stop now." Sarah's hand flew to her gun. How the hell did he get this channel? Hale's eyes scanned the darkness. "He's not in the forest," he said quietly. "He's watching us." Hillcrest used to be a school, shut down after a fire 20 years ago. Locals said the building was cursed, but now the upper floor glowed faintly in the night. When Hale and Sarah arrived, the air reeked of gasoline. They moved carefully through the broken halls, flashlights slicing the smoke. In the gymnasium, they found another body. Lydia Wren posed in the center of a giant spiral made of ash. Sarah covered her mouth. God. On the wall behind her, scrawled in soot. Lesson 3, Forgiveness. A faint sound echoed above them, footsteps, deliberate and slow. Hale raised his gun. Ethan, he shouted, it's over. A shadow crossed the rafters. Then fire erupted around them, the spiral igniting in a perfect circle. Hale tackled Sarah as flames roared to life, the old floor collapsing beneath them. They barely escaped, rolling into the mud outside as the building burned behind them. In the distance, sirens wailed. Sarah looked at Hale, trembling. He could have killed us both. Why didn't he? Hale stared into the inferno. Because he wants me alive, he said. He's saving me for the end. Asheville slept under a blanket of fog, the ruins of Hillcrest still smoldering on the hill. Hale hadn't slept in 40 hours. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lydia's body, the spiral, the fire, the words. Sarah brought him coffee. You can't keep running like this, she said quietly. I don't have a choice, Hale murmured. He's forcing me to follow his pattern. The FBI profiler, Rourke, walked in carrying a folder. You might want to see this, he said. Inside were photos not from recent crimes but from Ethan's childhood home. In one, a small boy sat at a kitchen table drawing spirals on the wall with a crayon. Behind him, his mother lay in a hospital bed, frail, oxygen tube dangling from her nose. Ethan was 8 when she died, Rourke said. He watched it happen. His father blamed the doctors, beat him half to death for not praying hard enough. Hale stared at the photo. He's not killing at random. He's reenacting everything that broke him. Rourke nodded. But the last stage of trauma repetition is always the self. When he's finished the spiral, he'll come for you, and then he'll end himself. A week later, a farmer called 911 about a light in the woods behind his property, an abandoned barn. Hale and Sarah arrived first, guns drawn. Inside, the air was thick with rot. Candles burned in a circle, dripping wax onto the dirt floor. In the center was a crude altar, bones tied together with red thread, a mask made from dried skin, and another tape recorder. Hale pressed play. You remember this place, Marcus. You stood here once 10 years ago. You called it the end. You lied. You never saw what I saw, the way the world folds in on itself when pain is pure. You took that from me, but I'm giving it back. Sarah shivered. He's losing it. No, Hale said softly. He's getting closer. They found footprints leading deeper into the woods, bare, bloody. The prints stopped abruptly near a creek. Hale knelt down, shining his light into the water. A reflection stared back, not his own. Something moved beneath the surface. Then came the whisper, I'm right here. Hale spun around, gun raised, but only the forest answered. Back at headquarters, Sarah dug into sealed archives, trial records from Ethan's conviction. One file was missing, Exhibit D9. The log said it had been removed by Detective Hale himself. When she confronted him, he looked away. It wasn't supposed to matter, he said. What was in it? Hale sighed. A confession, his last one. He didn't talk for weeks after arrest until the night before trial. He said there was a 14th victim. Sarah froze. 14th, but the case closed at 13. Because the 14th was never found, Hale said quietly. He said she was the beginning of the circle. Sarah leaned forward. Who was she, Marcus? He hesitated. My sister. The room went silent. She went missing in Asheville when Ethan was 15, Hale continued. I didn't tell anyone during the investigation, conflict of interest. I thought she'd run away. But Ethan, he said he buried her under the first spiral. Sarah's voice trembled. He's not just hunting you, he's making you relive it. They dug for hours under the roots of an old oak near the Cross property, guided by Ethan's pattern. The air was thick with decay and rain. At dawn, the shovel hit something solid. Inside a shallow grave lay the remains of a young girl, long dark hair, a necklace still around her neck. Hale dropped to his knees, trembling. Sarah put a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry." But Hale wasn't crying. His eyes were wide with realization. "He wanted me to find her," he whispered. "He wanted this moment." Rourke stepped forward. "Then it's part of his ritual closure through control." Hale stood slowly. "No, it's an invitation." Inside the coffin was another tape recorder. Hale pressed play. "You see it now, Marcus. Every circle begins with loss. Finish the spiral and you'll understand why I made it." The tape ended with faint church bells. Sarah whispered, "The chapel again." Hale shook his head. "No, there's another bell, one they haven't rung in years. The clock tower in Asheville Square." Night fell like a curse. The old clock tower loomed over Asheville, its hands frozen at midnight. The streets were empty, everyone locked inside, terrified of the hollow man's return. Hale and Sarah entered through the side door. The stairs spiraled upward, echoing with each step. At the top, the clock face glowed faintly in the moonlight. Beneath it, chains hung from the beams, and someone was bound there, still alive. It was Agent Rourke. Sarah ran to him, cutting the ropes. "Rourke, what happened?" His eyes darted to the shadows. He said you'd come, said the circles almost closed." Hale turned toward the gears and saw it. Another spiral drawn in oil and blood across the machinery. A whisper drifted through the air, calm and close. "You dug up your past, Marcus. Now dig your grave." Then the tower bells roared to life, deafening, shaking the walls. The floor beneath them began to give way, metal screaming. Hale grabbed Sarah's arm as the gears exploded in sparks. From the darkness below came laughter, hollow, distant and unstoppable. The hollow man was still one step ahead. The tower collapsed at dawn. Fire crews battled for hours to control the blaze while Hale sat in the mud, staring at the twisted remains of the bell. Sarah spoke to paramedics nearby, her voice low and urgent. When she returned, Hale was still silent. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. "He's not just killing anymore," Hale whispered. "He's erasing time. Every place he touches, gone." Sarah knelt beside him. "You need rest, Marcus." Hale shook his head. "He's not done yet. The spiral isn't complete." Later that day, the fire investigators confirmed what Hale already knew: no sign of Ethan's body. But they did find something embedded in the gears, a small pocket watch. Inside, etched on the back, were 3 words. 7 left, Marcus. Sarah swallowed hard. "He's counting down." Hale stopped going home. His apartment became a nest of case files, red string, and maps. The spiral grew on his wall, each point marked with pins, each murder a symbol. Sarah watched helplessly as he unraveled. "You haven't slept in days," she said. "I can't," Hale muttered. "He's talking again." "Talking?" Hale gestured at a small tape recorder on his desk. "He leaves them for me, new ones. I found this one under my car this morning." He pressed play. "You think you're hunting me, Marcus, but I'm in your walls, in your mind. You're just tracing my hand." Sarah's heart pounded. "That voice, how does he keep finding you?" Hale's hands trembled. "He doesn't have to, I think I never stopped following him." Outside, thunder rolled. A familiar storm was returning to Asheville, the same kind that had freed Ethan the night he escaped. Another call came in, a triple homicide on the edge of town. An elderly woman and her 2 sons, throats slit, the spiral carved into their floor. But there was something new. On the wall above the bodies was a mural painted in blood. It showed a child kneeling beside a dying woman, hands pressed in prayer. Sarah turned to Hale. "That's his mother." Hale nodded. And that's him, he's painting memories. In the corner of the room, a candle flickered beside a note. Forgive her and the circle ends. Sarah frowned. Forgive who? Hale whispered, his mother, but maybe mine too. He picked up the candle and stared at the flame. He's forcing me to see what he saw, loss, blame, the silence after. Sarah touched his arm. You can stop this, Marcus. He met her gaze. No, I can only finish it. The next clue came from an unlikely source. The last patient of Asheville Psychiatric Hospital, a man named Calvin Dross, who'd once shared a ward with Ethan Cross before his imprisonment. When Hale and Sarah visited, Calvin grinned with missing teeth. He said you'd come, he rasped. Said you were the last piece. Where is he? Hale demanded. Calvin giggled. In the mirror room. The hospital had been closed for 15 years. When they broke in, the air smelled of mold and bleach. The mirror room was the old therapy ward, walls lined with cracked one-way glass. In the center stood a chair. On it sat a mannequin wearing Ethan's prison uniform. Its face was covered with fragments of mirror, glued in a spiral. Hale stepped closer. Etched across the chest were the words, "Do you see yourself yet?" As Hale stared, his reflection distorted in every mirror shard, 1,000 versions of his own face, each one smiling back at him. He stumbled backward, gasping. For the first time, he wasn't sure whether the whisper he heard came from Ethan or from himself. Sarah found Hale in his car the next morning. Gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing holding him together. "You're not well," she said. "You need to step back." "I can't," he replied. "He's almost done." "Marcus, this isn't about him anymore. It's about you. He's turning you into what he is." He looked at her with hollow eyes. Maybe that's what he wanted all along. She grabbed his shoulder. "Don't you say that." But Hale's phone buzzed before she could continue. A new message, an audio file unnamed. He pressed play. Ethan's voice filled the car, soft and calm as always. "There's one place left to visit, Marcus. The one you never dared to return to. Your childhood home." Sarah shook her head. "He knows everything about you. How?" Hale whispered, "Because he is me, what's left of me. I made him when I found my sister's body all those years ago." Sarah froze. "What are you saying?" "I killed the man who took her. Ethan Cross just grew from that night." Sarah stepped back. "That's impossible." Hale's eyes were wild. "He's not flesh, Sarah. He's the echo, the thing I created when I buried the truth." The radio crackled again. "Come home, Marcus." Sarah watched in horror as Hale started the car. The rain was falling again, just like the night the Hollow Man escaped. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, the spiral turned one last time. The drive back to Hale's childhood home felt endless. Sarah sat beside him, silent, watching rain streak down the windshield. Every signpost looked familiar, yet older, deader. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly. Hale's eyes didn't move from the road. "He's waiting for me there, always has been." The car climbed the hill where the old Hale farmhouse stood, collapsed porch, broken windows, vines crawling through the roof. It had been abandoned for 30 years, ever since the night his sister vanished. As Hale stepped out into the rain, the air smelled of rot and old wood. Every step on the porch groaned like a warning. Sarah followed, flashlight trembling in her hand. "Marcus, this place shouldn't still be standing." He turned to her, his voice low. "Neither should I." Inside, the walls were covered with mold and the remains of family photos eaten by time. Hale's flashlight beam lingered on one, a picture of him as a boy, his sister beside him, smiling. The air shifted, a whisper faint, almost playful. "You remember the lullaby, Marcus." Sarah froze. "Did you hear that?" Hale didn't answer. He moved toward the basement door, the same door his father had locked the night his sister disappeared. It was still sealed with a rusted chain. He broke it with his boot. The stairs creaked as they descended into darkness. The air grew colder, heavier. At the bottom, they found something strange. A series of circles painted on the floor in ash and soot, overlapping like ripples in water. In the center was a chair. On it sat a tape recorder. Hale pressed play. "We were here once, Marcus. You and me, before the world broke. You called for her, but I answered." Sarah whispered, "What does that mean?" Hale's hand trembled. "It means he was born here." As the tape continued, Hale's memories began to flood back. The thunder, the screaming, his father's rage. "You thought it was him," Ethan's voice said through the static. "You thought your father killed her, but he didn't, Marcus, you did." The world seemed to tilt. Hale fell to his knees, clutching his head. "I was a child," he gasped. "It was an accident." "No accident," the voice purred. "You wanted her to stop crying, you wanted silence, and silence answered." Sarah grabbed his shoulders. "Marcus, stop listening to him." But the basement lights flickered, and in that stuttering glow, a shadow stood in the corner. A man, tall and still, his face hidden behind a blood-stained mask of mirrors. Ethan Cross. He stepped forward slowly, boots crunching over glass. Sarah raised her gun. "Don't move." Ethan tilted his head. "She can't see the truth, Marcus. Only you can." Then he blew out the candle. Darkness swallowed everything. When Hale opened his eyes, he was no longer in the basement. He stood in the middle of the spiral, but this time it wasn't ash or blood. It was light, blinding white, stretching in every direction. Voices echoed around him. His mother, his sister, his father, all whispering his name. He saw flashes, his sister crying, his father shouting, the sound of thunder outside. A mirror breaking. Then Ethan appeared across from him, face clear for the first time. He looked identical to Hale. "Now you see," Ethan said softly. "You built me the night you killed her. You buried me with her body and I waited." Hale shook his head, backing away. "You're not real." Ethan smiled. "Then why do you know every step of my pattern? Why do you dream what I do?" Hale fell to his knees. "I tried to stop you." "You tried to stop yourself," Ethan whispered. "But we're the same sermon, Marcus, just two halves of one prayer." The light dimmed, and when it was gone, Hale stood alone in the basement again, gun shaking in his hand. Sarah was gone. Hale stumbled upstairs, calling her name. No answer. The rain had stopped. The house was silent, too silent. In the living room, the spiral was burned into the floorboards. In its center lay Sarah's badge and a single message written in blood. "The circle is closed." Hale's knees buckled. He pressed his hands to his face, shaking uncontrollably. Then he heard it, the click of a tape recorder behind him. The same voice, now softer. "Thank you, Marcus, I'm free now." He turned, and there in the mirror on the wall stood Ethan, smiling faintly. But this time, his reflection matched Hale's movements perfectly. The mirror cracked. Hale whispered, "What are you?" The voice answered, "I'm what's left when you bury guilt too deep to die." The mirror shattered completely, shards scattering across the floor, and when Hale looked down, there was no reflection left at all. Outside, the sirens wailed again. Police cars flooded the hill, lights cutting through the mist. They found Hale standing in the doorway, drenched in blood, whispering over and over, "It's over, it's over." But behind him, burned into the wall, was a perfect spiral, still warm to the touch. Blackridge Prison loomed against the gray morning sky, wrapped in barbed wire and silence. The last time Hale had stood at its gates, Ethan Cross had been behind them. Now he was bringing him back, or what was left of him. Two officers led Hale through the corridors. He wasn't under arrest, not yet. They called it protective evaluation. Sarah's death or disappearance was still under investigation. No body had been found, only her badge, her blood, and Hale's fingerprints everywhere. Dr. Keene, the prison psychiatrist, met him in a small concrete room. "You've been through trauma, detective," he said. "We only want to understand what happened." Hale smiled faintly. "You won't." The doctor leaned forward. "You say Ethan Cross isn't real, that he's part of you. But the bodies are real, the evidence is real. Help me make sense of that." Hale's eyes drifted to the mirror on the wall. For a second, he thought he saw someone smiling back. He whispered, "You're looking at the wrong side of the glass." They searched Hale's home after his breakdown and found 17 tapes, each one marked with a red thread. When the Bureau played them, they expected the voice of Ethan Cross, the mocking, composed killer who taunted the police for weeks. But every recording was the same, the voice of Marcus Hale himself. "We'll begin again," one tape said calmly. 13 souls for peace, 13 steps in the spiral. The agents who heard them exchanged silent looks. The psychologist paused the tape and asked, "Did he ever show signs of dissociation?" Sarah's field notes, recovered from her car, had a single line written across the last page. "He doesn't chase the killer, he becomes him." After that, the Bureau sealed the tapes. The official story became simple. Hale suffered a psychotic break, obsessed with a case until he created his own phantom. But Blackridge's cameras told a different story. At 3:06 a.m. on October 14th, a power surge hit Blackridge, identical to the one that had freed Ethan Cross the first time. When the lights returned, the guards reviewed the security feed. Hale's observation room was empty. No sign of forced entry, no broken locks. Just a spiral drawn in condensation on the glass. The warden watched the footage 20 times. "Impossible," he muttered. "There's nowhere he could have gone." But one frame, barely visible, showed movement behind the reflection in the mirror wall. A figure stepping forward from inside the glass, dragging a red thread across the floor. The audio file from that night captured a single phrase: "He's home again." Weeks later, Asheville woke to news of another killing. Same ritual, same spiral. The newspapers didn't print the details, not anymore. But locals whispered that the body had been left at the steps of the old chapel, exactly where it all began. On the altar lay a new tape recorder. "You thought I was gone," said a calm, familiar voice. "But you can't kill what's already hollow. The sermon must be finished." That day, a storm rolled in over the valley. Blackridge Prison went dark again. Witnesses claimed to see a man in a black coat walking the road toward town, head bowed, rain soaking his shoulders. Some said he looked like Hale. Others swore it was Cross. But those who saw him up close said he looked like both, two faces fading in and out of each other with every flash of lightning. The last recording was found months later in the ruins of Hale's childhood home. The tape was warped by heat and moisture, but parts of it survived. "I see it now," the voice said softly. "There was never a hollow man. There was only the silence between what I did and what I remembered." The spiral wasn't a curse. It was a mirror. Every turn brings you closer to yourself until you disappear inside. Static filled the rest. They say the ashes of the old farmhouse still glow at night, faintly red. Sometimes people claim to hear whispers from the woods, a man's voice reciting names, over and over as though counting. 13, always 13. And if you listen closely, you can hear another voice echoing his words, softer, calmer, identical. Somewhere between them, the hollow man still walks the spiral, neither alive nor dead, just a reflection looking for its next mirror. The night the Burkes found the dog, the forest was whispering. Rain drummed on the truck roof as Thomas swerved onto the muddy shoulder, headlights catching movement among the trees, a dark shape limping through the storm. "Poor thing," Emily said, opening the door before Thomas could protest. The animal stumbled forward, ribs showing, fur clotted with mud. Its eyes gleamed faintly gold when the light hit them, too gold like polished brass. They wrapped it in a blanket and lifted it into the truck bed. The dog didn't resist, didn't growl, just stared at them with something that felt too human. When they got home, their daughter Lily knelt beside it, whispering softly. The dog leaned close, pressing its head against her knee as though it already belonged. They called it Shadow. That first night, Shadow wouldn't eat. Thomas left a bowl of food near the back door, but the dog only stared at it. At midnight, Emily woke to soft scratching on the window. She got up, thinking it was a branch, but outside in the dark, two golden eyes hovered just beyond the glass. Shadow stood perfectly still in the rain, head tilted. When she whispered his name, he turned and disappeared into the woods. The next morning he was back on the porch, dry and clean somehow, paws spotless. Lily squealed and hugged him tight. He came back. Thomas frowned. From where? Shadow just stared at him and smiled. Just a little, or maybe that was the rain. By the third day, the smell began. Not from the dog, from the cellar. It started faint, like wet leaves or rust. Emily thought it was a leak in the pipes. Thomas went down with a flashlight. At the bottom of the steps, he froze. There were paw prints in the dust, large, wet, leading to the far wall and stopping there as if the animal had walked into it. He ran his hand across the bricks, cold, damp, nothing behind them. That night the smell grew stronger. When Thomas checked again, the prints were gone. Shadow lay at the foot of the stairs, wagging his tail slowly, eyes glinting gold in the beam of the flashlight. Lily started waking up with scratches on her arms. Shadow was playing, she said. He gets excited. Emily wanted to believe her, but the scratches were too deep, and sometimes, when Lily played fetch, she swore she saw other shapes moving through the trees behind the dog. Animals, Thomas said, but his voice didn't sound sure. That night, Shadow dragged something to the porch, a deer's head, still bleeding, tongue lolling out. Lily screamed. Shadow wagged his tail. Thomas buried it in the woods, muttering, "That's not normal." Emily looked at the dog and saw something flicker under its skin, like the shape of a face pressing from the inside. Emily dreamed she was walking through the forest barefoot, the air thick with rot. Something followed her, panting softly, always just behind her shoulder. When she turned, she saw Shadow, but larger, taller, its mouth opening wider than it should. Inside its throat, faces twisted and moved, human faces, eyes open, mouths whispering her name. She woke screaming. Shadow sat at the end of the bed, staring at her. Thomas rolled over. "What's wrong?" But Shadow didn't move. His eyes glowed gold in the dark, reflecting the faint shape of another figure standing beside him. One Emily couldn't see clearly, but whose breath she could feel. And from somewhere deep in the walls came a low growl, not animal but human. For a week, Thomas tried to ignore the sounds. Scratching, breathing, sometimes whispering. He told himself it was pipes or raccoons, but the noise always came from beneath the floorboards, deep in the crawlspace no one had entered in years. One night he crouched with a flashlight and pulled open the hatch. The air that rose up smelled of earth and something far worse, sweet, metallic, like old blood. "Shadow," he whispered. The light flickered. In that instant, he saw eyes glowing in the dark, dozens of them shifting. He scrambled back and slammed the hatch shut. When he looked up, Shadow was standing in the hallway, tail wagging, mud dripping from his paws. In his mouth was something pale and small, a finger bone. Emily stopped sleeping. Every mirror in the house reflected things that weren't there. When she brushed her hair, she'd glimpse movement, a black shape padding past the doorway. But when she turned, nothing. Once, while washing her hands, she saw Shadow behind her in the reflection, only larger, his fur rippling as though filled with smoke. Then the reflection blinked. The real dog didn't. Emily screamed and shattered the mirror. Thomas rushed in, shouting, "What happened?" "He blinked," she said, trembling. "The one in the glass, he blinked." Shadow stood in the corner, head tilted, and licked the blood from her shaking hand. The Burke's neighbors, the Marshes, stopped by one evening with a casserole. "We saw your new dog," Mrs. Marsh said. "Big one, beautiful coat." Emily smiled faintly. "Yeah, he's protective." That night, Shadow slipped out the back door. By morning, the Marshes' chicken coop was torn apart, doors ripped clean off. No tracks, no feathers, just blood. Thomas followed the stains into the woods and found Shadow crouched over something, chewing. He called the dog's name. Shadow turned, tail wagging, muzzle slick with red. At his feet lay the remains of a shoe. Thomas buried what he found in silence. When he came back, Shadow was already sitting on the porch, clean, dry, smiling that not quite right smile. Lily began talking to someone in her room. "Shadow brings them," she told her mother. "They live in the trees, they're hungry." Emily's skin went cold. "Who, honey?" "The others," Lily said. "He says they were his before, he's making more." That night Thomas woke to laughter, children's laughter, echoing from outside. He ran to the window. In the yard, a dozen small figures stood in a circle. Their eyes glowed gold. At the center sat Shadow, still as a statue, tail swaying rhythmically. The children turned their heads in perfect unison toward the house. And then the lights went out. Morning brought silence. The woods were still, no birds, no wind. Emily found Thomas at the kitchen table, head in his hands. "We have to go," he said. "Now." They packed bags, grabbed Lily, ran to the truck, but Shadow was already sitting in the driver's seat. He looked bigger now, his fur rippling like smoke, his teeth too many to count. Lily began to cry. "He doesn't want us to leave." Thomas reached for the keys. The dog growled, a sound so deep it shook the glass. From the woods came hundreds of answering growls, voices overlapping, whispering one name over and over. "Shadow, Shadow, Shadow." Thomas stepped back. The dog climbed out of the truck, not walking, but unfolding. Its shadow stretched across the ground, splitting into dozens of shapes. And beneath the rumble of its growl came another sound, the low murmur of voices, hundreds of them speaking through its mouth. "We fed him, now he feeds." Emily found an old journal in the attic, buried beneath boxes. The handwriting was jagged, blackened with age. It belonged to the previous owner of the house, a man named Edgar Crow. "The dog is no ordinary beast. I fed it once when it begged at the edge of the forest. It watches the blood. It remembers the debt. If it enters your home, you cannot leave, not alive." Emily's hand shook. "Thomas, this dog, it's cursed." Thomas scoffed, trying to sound rational. "It's just a dog." The journal continued. "The creature consumes its masters when the moon turns golden. Each one is replaced in the forest where the others dwell. It hungers and the debt grows. There is no escape." Lily peeked over Emily's shoulder. "It says it lives in the trees, that's where it comes from." Emily's stomach turned. "That's why the children, the figures." That night, Shadow began circling the house. It moved unnaturally fast. Windows rattled, doors slammed shut. From the attic, Emily heard Lily screaming. She ran upstairs only to find Shadow standing at the doorway, but his body flickered, translucent, and human faces twisted in his fur, whispering unintelligible words. Lily lay in bed, wide-eyed. Shadow lunged. Emily grabbed the child just in time, pulling her back. The dog snarled, a sound that echoed like dozens of mouths at once. When Thomas tried to confront it, Shadow stepped through the wall as if the bricks were water. Blood glistened along its jaw. It was laughing now. The Burkes fled into the woods, thinking the dense trees would hide them. They ran blindly, branches slapping their faces. Shadow followed, moving effortlessly over the roots and undergrowth, never breaking stride. Then the whispers began, hundreds of voices, calling Thomas, Emily, Lily. They spoke in the same tone, coaxing, promising safety if they returned home. Thomas stumbled into a clearing. The golden moonlight fell perfectly on a circle of figures, dozens of small humanoid shapes, pale, starring, their eyes glowing gold. Shadow stepped into the circle, enormous now, his body flickering between wolf, human, and shadowy forms, faces inside his fur screaming silently. The figures knelt in unison, chanting, "Feed him, feed him, feed him." Emily grabbed Lily and ran deeper into the forest. Thomas stayed behind to distract Shadow. But it was no ordinary distraction. Shadow lunged at him, jaws stretching impossibly wide, and Thomas vanished in one gulp. Emily and Lily stopped. The echoes of Thomas's screams lingered in the trees. Shadow returned to the clearing, tail wagging. The humanoid shapes approached, carrying the remnants of Thomas, and fed him to Shadow. The golden moonlight pulsed. Shadow's eyes grew brighter. The faces inside his fur moved faster, twisting, whispering, screaming. Emily realized with horror, the dog didn't just eat its victims. It absorbed their memories, their fear, their essence, and it was hungry for more. They ran until dawn, exhausted and terrified. Emily finally stopped, clutching Lily. "We have to warn someone, we can't go back there." But the trees shifted unnaturally, and the whispers followed them. Shadow's voice, or perhaps the voices inside him, spoke from everywhere at once. "Return, you belong to the circle. All debts are collected. All masters are fed." Emily realized the forest itself had become part of the dog. Every shadow, every rustle, every whisper belonged to it. Behind them, the golden eyes glimmered between the trunks, watching, waiting. And Emily understood they were trapped. The forest around the Burke seemed alive now, alive with shadows that twisted unnaturally. Every branch looked like an arm reaching, every rustle like claws dragging across the undergrowth. Emily clutched Lily's hand so tightly it hurt. Her knuckles turned white. "We need to keep moving," she whispered. Lily glanced back. Golden eyes glimmered between the trees, watching them unblinking. Shadow's growl followed them, though they hadn't seen him yet. It wasn't just a growl, it was a chorus. Hundreds of voices layered over one another, whispering promises, threats, and hunger. "They're in the trees," Lily said quietly, her voice trembling. "They're watching, waiting." Emily swallowed. "We'll be safe if we make it out of the forest." But the forest was no longer just trees. Roots twisted into shapes like limbs. The dirt beneath them seemed to pulse with Shadow's heartbeat. Every step they took, Emily felt it echoing in the soles of her feet, as if the forest itself were following. Then came a snapping sound. Something large crashed through the underbrush behind them. Emily spun around, nothing. Only the whispering remained. And then the growl became a roar. Shadow appeared on the ridge above them, impossibly large, his shadow stretching across the clearing like a black tide. His eyes shone gold, and inside them, Emily thought she saw her own face screaming. He leapt, and the forest seemed to shift with him. He wasn't running, he was flowing like water, limbs stretching, fur blending with the shadows of the trees. Emily and Lily screamed and ran blindly, branches tearing at their clothes, roots trying to trip them. But Shadow followed with unerring speed. After hours, or maybe days, Emily couldn't tell, they stumbled into an abandoned village at the forest's edge. The houses were burned, overgrown, silent. A fog lay over the cobblestones, thick and suffocating. "Why here?" Emily whispered. Lily tugged her hand. "Because he wants us to see." The windows of the houses reflected things that weren't there. Shadowy figures moving, faces pressed against the glass, mouths whispering Emily and Lily's names. Emily's stomach turned. This place, it's like a trap. A low growl rolled through the village. Shadows pooled in the corners, stretching like smoke. And then Shadow appeared, stepping out of the mist. He was enormous, towering over the rooftops now. Faces of the past victims swirled in his fur, screaming, whispering, calling Emily and Lily to come closer. Emily realized something terrifying. The dog wasn't just a predator. He was a collector, and the village was his pantry. each house a cage for previous meals. She grabbed Lily and ran toward the forest, but every street curved impossibly, returning them to the same square, facing Shadow once more. "There is no escape," 1,000 voices whispered, "only feeding." Shadow began circling them. The fog thickened, and the village itself seemed to pulse. Emily could see shapes emerging from the mist, long-limbed creatures with golden eyes, silent and obedient to Shadow. The dog lowered his head, and from his mouth came a black mist that slithered toward Emily and Lily. When it touched her arm, she saw horrifying visions of past victims, faces screaming, bodies being consumed, the echoes of their final moments trapped inside Shadow's fur. Lily screamed and pulled Emily into a narrow alley. But the alley wasn't narrow anymore. It stretched impossibly, curving back on itself. The village had become a labyrinth. Shadow barked or maybe laughed, and the sound shattered the night air, echoing off invisible walls. Emily realized the truth. This was a ritual. Shadow consumed not just flesh, but the fear and memory of those he killed. Every time a master ran, he grew stronger. Every scream added to his form. And tonight, he was preparing for the next feast. She grabbed a rusted knife from a fallen fence post, hoping it might do something, anything, against this impossible creature. "You cannot hurt me," the dog whispered. "I am hunger, I am the forest, I am what you buried and forgot." In the twisting streets of the spectral village, Shadow struck. He moved faster than thought, flowing over rooftops, through alleys, through the fog itself. Emily tripped, and Shadow was upon her. His jaws opened wider than possible, a void filled with screaming faces and writhing shadows. She barely pushed Lily out of the way before the dog lunged, tearing through the night air and devouring Thomas, who had followed them to protect them. His scream echoed through Emily's mind as he disappeared into Shadow's mouth. Emily fell to her knees, clutching Lily. She tried to run, but everywhere she turned, the village twisted into impossibility, streets looping, shadows reaching from the corners. Shadow prowled, golden eyes flicking between them. The faces in his fur twisted with hunger, pleading, warning, screaming. Emily understood then. Every master Shadow consumed became part of his mind, and he would never stop. The realization crushed her. They could not run. They could only delay the inevitable. Emily stumbled into a clearing. The fog lifted slightly, revealing trees twisted and blackened, their bark marked with claw scratches. "Listen," Lily whispered. From deep in the forest came hundreds of voices, murmuring in unison. Feed him, become him, he hungers." Emily clutched her head. The whispers were inside her now, inside her very thoughts. She realized that Shadow was not just outside, he was inside their minds. The dog stepped forward from the shadows, enormous, impossible, every victim's face writhing within his black fur. "I am the hunger," he said. "I am the death, and now it is yours." Emily screamed, grabbing Lily and running blindly into the forest, the golden eyes always on them, the shadows clawing at their heels. Somewhere above, the moon turned gold, and the forest seemed to shiver, alive with anticipation. Emily realized in terror that there was no escape, only feeding, and the spiral of shadow would never end. Emily and Lily ran until their lungs burned, the fog thickening, twisting the paths behind them. Every tree seemed alive, whispering, watching. Roots stretched across the path, reaching for their feet, snagging, tripping them. Shadow moved with unnatural silence, his golden eyes glowing like lanterns in the mist. Faces of his victims swirled in his fur, some screaming silently, some mouthing words Emily could not comprehend. "He's here," Lily whispered. "He's waiting." Emily grabbed her daughter's hand. "Then we fight. We have to get to the heart of the forest, whatever that means. Maybe there's a way to stop him." The forest opened to a clearing, a ring of dead trees surrounding a massive stone altar, blackened with centuries of blood. Emily realized this was the origin of Shadow, the place where the dog had first been fed, first cursed. Shadow stepped into the clearing. He wasn't running anymore, he was floating, impossibly large, fur rippling with the faces and memories of every person he had eaten. His low growl shook the ground. "Feed me," he said, "or join them." Emily knew then that this was a ritual the dog had performed for decades, and it had never been broken. Emily dug the journal of Edgar Crow from her bag. The pages were brittle, smeared with what looked like blood. "He is not a dog, he is hunger given form. He will consume his masters one by one until none remain. The only way to stop him is to undo the debt, but the debt is never truly undone. The forest protects him. He is eternal." Lily's eyes widened. "What does that mean?" Emily swallowed. "It means if we try to fight him directly, we die. He can't be killed. He can only be starved." The dog's growl deepened. Faces in his fur turned toward them, screaming silently. Emily realized the horror. The ritual wasn't just physical, it was psychic, feeding on fear itself. Shadow lunged, but Emily held up the journal, chanting the protective words Crow had written, though half of them were illegible. A shimmer of light surrounded them. Shadow paused, growling, faces twisting in frustration. "You think a book can stop me," he said. "I am what you created when you looked away." Emily tried to keep moving, dragging Lily behind her, weaving around gnarled roots. Shadow flowed through the forest like smoke, bodies of past victims stretching into the trees behind him. Emily realized with horror, anyone Shadow consumed became part of the forest itself. Their screams whispered through the trees, echoing around her. She grabbed a fallen branch. Swinging at the dog, it passed through him harmlessly. Shadow laughed, a sound that shook her bones. "I am hunger," he said. "I am debt, I am the forest, and now you are mine." Emily felt something enter her mind, a whisper, low, coaxing, offering safety if she obeyed. She resisted, but Lily trembled in her arms, eyes wide. "You can't fight me," Shadow said, voice echoing in their heads. "Only feed me or become me." Emily screamed, pulling Lily toward the altar. The stone glowed faintly in the moonlight. The ritual had a center, and she realized it might be the only way to survive. Shadow stopped at the edge of the altar. The faces inside his fur were now hundreds, writhing, screaming, mouths opening and closing in unison. Then he began to change. His body elongated, fur melting into smoke. Limbs stretched, twisted, breaking the laws of physics. His jaws opened wider than any creature should be able to. He towered above Emily and Lily now, nearly touching the treetops. His voice was every voice he had ever consumed, overlapping. "Give me your fear. Give me your memories, become mine." Emily held the journal tightly. The words of Crow burned in her mind. He can only be starved, not destroyed. Deny him and he will fade temporarily. Emily realized the truth. The only way to survive was to refuse to fear, to refuse to feed the hunger inside Shadow. Emily planted herself on the stone altar, holding Lily close. Shadow loomed over them, growling, snapping, stretching impossibly high. The faces in his fur screamed, pleading, demanding, threatening. Emily forced herself to breathe, forcing her fear down. Lily clung to her, trembling. Shadow hissed, smoke like tendrils flicking toward them. "I am hunger," Shadow shouted. "I am eternal." Emily closed her eyes and whispered, "You are nothing. You are not real. You only exist if I fear you." For a moment the world paused. The golden eyes flickered. The whispers faltered. The forest trembled. Then Shadow screamed, a sound like 1,000 voices in pain, and retreated into the trees, flowing back into the mist. His body shuddered, the faces inside him screaming and fatting. Emily opened her eyes. The clearing was empty for now. The fog was lighter, but the whispers lingered, faint, in the corners of the forest. She knew one thing for certain: he wasn't gone, not forever. He was only starving, waiting for the next master. Days passed in the forest. Emily and Lily survived on scraps, moving cautiously. They could feel Shadow's presence everywhere, in the wind, in the rustling leaves, in the very ground beneath them. One night the golden moon rose. Emily's stomach dropped. That was the signal. Shadow's hunger was at its peak. From the mist came the growl, low, rumbling, a chorus of hundreds of voices merged into one. The forest around them warped. Branches grew into shapes like claws, roots writhed toward them. "You cannot hide," Shadow whispered, voice layered inside her mind. "You belong to me." Emily tightened her grip on Lily. "Not if I can help it." She realized that the dog had become a force of nature, feeding on fear and memory, not just flesh. And to survive, they would have to starve him, deny his power. Emily led Lily to the center of the clearing, to the altar. Shadows swirled around them, condensing into shapes that resembled the hundreds of victims. Shadow appeared, towering smoke-like faces writhing across his fur, jaws opening impossibly wide. "Give yourself," he commanded. "Your fear, your mind, your daughter." Emily planted her feet. "No, you take nothing," she shouted. The dog lunged, but as he passed through the clearing, Emily held up the journal. The protective words of Edgar Crow lit the stone altar, a soft golden glow expanding outward. Shadow recoiled, the voices in his fur shrieking in protest. Faces pressed outward as though struggling to escape. "I am eternal," Shadow roared. "You cannot deny me." Emily focused. She refused to be afraid. Every scream inside her mind, every whisper of terror she blocked. Shadow's form flickered, smoke-like, shimmering, unstable. Emily remembered the journal's final entry. "He is not a dog. He is the forest's hunger made flesh. The first feeding birthed him, and he will only grow stronger with fear. Do not feed him. Do not look at him through eyes of dread." Lily, trembling, repeated, "We are not afraid. We are not afraid." Shadow paused, golden eyes narrowing. Faces inside his fur twisted violently. He hissed, the sound like wind through gravestones. Emily realized something horrifying. The only reason he had grown so strong was that fear itself nourished him. If they could deny him completely, starve him of fear, they could weaken him. "You are nothing," Emily whispered. "You are only the hunger we refuse to feed." The dog shrieked, a sound so terrible it could have split mountains. Smoke and shadows erupted from his body. Trees shuddered, roots convulsed, and for the first time, Shadow's form faltered. The clearing fell silent. Shadows coiled and writhed, then dissolved. Faces vanished. Golden eyes dimmed to faint embers. Emily held Lily tightly. The forest seemed to breathe. Shadow was still there, a faint outline, smoke dissipating, but he was starving, weakened, contained. "This is temporary," Emily whispered, knowing the truth. "He will return if fear grows again." The journal warned that only constant vigilance could keep him at bay. Shadow had been born of neglect, of fear, of blood, and he would never truly die. The forest quieted. The fog lifted slightly. Emily and Lily were safe for now. But from deep in the shadows, faintly, a low growl echoed. Golden eyes flickered in the trees, waiting. Months later, the Burkes had moved. They never spoke of Shadow, never returned to the forest. But Emily often dreamed of the golden eyes. Lily sometimes woke screaming, whispering of figures in the trees. The forest, now silent, held secrets. Those who wandered too close sometimes heard whispers, soft but persistent. "Feed me, feed me, feed me." Shadow was gone from their lives, but not from the world. He remained in the forest, a devourer waiting, starving, eternal, unrelenting. The golden moon rose over the trees. Somewhere deep in the fog, Shadow's eyes gleamed. And in the wind, hundreds of faint voices whispered, "Hunger never dies. The devourer waits, always."